Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Wasting fuel and annoying the people that live there? Sounds like you're the Karen OP. But it's up to you, dear listeners, to decide who's right and who's wrong in our first story. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Warming my diesel truck was too loud. Yesterday I was leaving the job site and this guy was in his garage across the street. The highway I take home is a quarter mile down the road, so I was warming up the old 7.3 that I'm borrowing while my truck is in the shop. This guy walks across the street and starts complaining about how loud my truck is. My exhaust is pointed away and it wasn't like I was flooring it to warm it up, just barely over idle. Anyway, the engine was almost to the C mark, so instead of arguing at 4 in the afternoon, I left. This morning, the house next to his is getting the basement poured, and there are 3 cement trucks revving their engines right on the other side of his fence. All I could do was laugh. It's 7:30 in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Karen. And our second story. I'm refusing to take my name off the deed to my mother-in-law's home. Me and my partner have been together for 8 years, married for 2 of them. 5 years ago, we bought a home together, a small 2-bedroom unit, just to see if we could coexist without killing one another, with the intention of only staying a few years before we got married and then upgraded to something larger. 3 years on, we had enough of a deposit to do just that when my partner's mother came to us asking for help. She wanted to buy a place but didn't have anything in the way of savings. She was tired of renting as it was becoming more and more expensive. We talked about the issue, knowing that if we agreed to help, it meant delaying our own upgrade by a further 3 years at minimum. With some hesitation on our part, we nevertheless did the right thing and helped out his mother by giving her $90K, the sum total of all our savings at the time, making it clear it was just a loan, and she bought a place also with the aid of her other son. Recently, my partner's been talking to me about getting my name taken off the documentation to the house, so it's only in her name and 2 sons all on the paperwork. I know his mother's been in his ear about this because he only ever brings it up after a solo visit to her. For a while, I avoided the conversation, but recently my husband has an actual conversation with a lawyer to draw up paperwork to have my name legally removed. When I found out, I told my husband we needed to have a serious talk, and I told him honestly that I would not remove my name from the documentation because, to date, his mother has not paid either of us back a single cent of the money we lent her. This angered my husband, who said I had agreed to take my name off the documentation. That's why he spoke to a lawyer in the first place. When I insisted I never agreed and that I was just protecting us both by insisting our name stay on all the documentation, he called me paranoid that his mother would never cheat us. Now I feel guilty for refusing to remove my name from the documentation, seeing as I did help pay for the place she bought, and without our help, she would still be stuck renting. Edit. Update. It's been almost a month since I put this post up, and quite a few things have changed. First off, I went through all my emails and text messages, anything that mentioned money, my mother-in-law's property, or talking to a lawyer or bank. Anything that was signed, I made sure to print off a copy and put in a folder, and I've asked my parents to keep this folder at their place as my backup. Secondly, me and my husband had a long talk. I asked him to listen to a scenario, then give me his opinion. In this roundabout way, he came to see and understand things from my perspective and has agreed my name will remain on all documentation until we've been paid back. No payment schedule has been made yet, but we're talking about it at least. He's also told his mother the same, and she's stopped asking for my name to be removed. To be very clear, and this hurt to ask him, but we're not getting divorced. My husband doesn't want to leave me, and no, I will not divorce him. Thirdly, the situation with my brother-in-law living with us, on top of everything else. Well, this week he was fired from work, and he hid it from everyone. Now, before people start downing him, and I kind of see him being fired as a good thing for the following reasons. He was forced to look for work elsewhere. He chose to look for a place closer to where his mother lives and succeeded. This means he'll be moving back in with his mother. I'm very happy about this. With his new job, he also got a pay raise and a few more hours as well as a rotating roster, so he has 1 weekend off a month, something he didn't have at his last job. While things have not been resolved fully with mother-in-law, at least between me and my hubby, we've opened communication once more. Still, I'd like to thank everyone who gave me their input. It made my feelings of guilt go away, and it also made me feel secure and brave enough to have the open and honest discussion I needed with my husband. And our next story. Never tell me to do my worst, as I can be both lazy and meticulous at the same time. I work as a compliance officer at a company that needs to prove compliance to a government body and a certifying body. Our processes are designed in order to create that evidence. When I joined the company, I quickly noticed that the product development teams were not going by the process and were not documenting and generating the required evidence. I went to talk to their manager about it, and he told me we're very busy and we'll get to it when we can. I explained to him that this project has been going on for 2 years already and it'll be done in 14 months. You cannot retroactively go back in time and try to create 2 years worth of evidence. He replied, "Your stuff are not real issue, and I'm only concerned if there's a problem with the product." I explained to him that without this evidence, we cannot certify the product and put it on the market. He smirked and said, "That's your problem now, isn't it? Do your worst." I admit a part of me wanted to resign after that conversation to avoid being associated with a potentially bad product or a failure to launch. Then it hit me. As part of the process, we should raise non-compliances as issues in the system, so I went to work. I reviewed all their work and evidence, and anything that was wrong or missing, I logged an issue against. I raised nearly 2,000 issues and have been reporting them to the VP and president of the company. He came screaming to me and threatened if I don't stop and put them as tasks for me to complete instead of issues, he'll have me fired. I refused. A week later, we were having a meeting with my boss, his boss, the VP, and the president. He and his boss went on a rant about how I was trying to destroy the project and make us miss our timelines and how I should take ownership of making us compliant. I replied, "I'm just following the processes and regulations. But if you really want me to change these issues to tasks, I don't mind, but we need to do it the right way." I went on to explain that they need to submit the change request, which will need to be reviewed and approved by a panel. Of course, their request will drive changes to our processes, so it'll need to go to the governance board. These changes will go against regulations, so we'll need to file for an exemption before we implement them. Assuming we receive it, we'll have to update and release all our processes again, which we do only in July. This meeting happened in August. After that, I can go change all the issues to tasks. Since I'm not working on the product, I'll need members of their teams to be freed up over 2 years so I can document the work they failed to document. This whole thing should take about 2 years. Until then, I'd have to hold them to the current process, assuming, of course, we receive the exemption. My boss, the VP, and president were all chuckling as the other guys' faces turned red in anger. They started to scream at me, but the president stopped them and ordered them to comply, and he'll personally check it happened. Since they were riding their teams hard and committed to aggressive timelines, the team ignored the documentation still. They both got fired and replaced, and the president negotiated a different timeline with the customer and paid the late fees. Sounds like the dev team didn't understand that being certified is part of meeting the requirements. Well done. And our last story. Boss Karen builds a huge store on my father's land. Hey, I'm about to take you on a trip down memory lane. This tale hails from over 4 decades ago, but let me tell you, it's etched in my mind like it happened yesterday. My old man, the owner of a chain of over 10 stores, was on the verge of acquiring a construction company responsible for building 4 of our existing outlets. To top it off, they were working on our 5th store, already halfway completed. I just finished university majoring in business and management. My father had a plan. He wanted me to fully grasp the ins and outs of the construction business, so he arranged for me to intern with the current owner of the company we were eyeing. This gent was planning to retire, hence the sale, and my father was eager to make the purchase. But here's the kicker. No one was to know who I really was, including the employees. My father wanted to ensure fair treatment and no special privileges. For 1 week, I had the privilege of working directly under the old owner himself. Let me tell you, he was an absolute gem of a person. knowledgeable, patient, and all around wonderful. But then it was time for me to move on to the next stage of my internship. I was sent to shadow one of the supervisors who was overseeing the construction of a different project apart from our store. And guess what? The entire team was a group of absolute legends, top-notch professionals in their field. But then on the fourth week, things took a turn for the worse. I was transferred to work under the boss responsible for constructing my family's store. The twist? He happened to be the bitter nephew of the old owner. This guy had a talent for treating everyone, including me, like dirt. The only exception was his secretary, Karen, who seemingly had an affinity for his favoritism. Together, they'd spend most of the workday lounging in their air-conditioned trailer, puffing cigarettes, sipping coffee, and subjecting us to what could only be described as torturous music. Whenever I needed something from the nephew, it felt like a scene straight out of The Godfather. Seriously, you could almost hear the dramatic music playing in the background as I timidly approached him for assistance. The construction site was being held together by the heroic efforts of the site supervisor, Mark. During my time there, my responsibilities consisted of one thing: playing delivery boy, fetching coffee and burgers for Karen and the nephew. Oh, and let's not forget the time I had to reorder coffee because it wasn't milky enough. The lengths we go to, right? Now here's where things get interesting. That bitter nephew, oh boy, he was constructing our family's building on our very own land. I endured it, knowing that in just a few days the ink would dry on the purchase documents and my father would become his new employer. It was sweet justice waiting to happen. On the eve of the big signing day, my father summoned me to his office. Armed with a comprehensive report on all the departments I'd managed to gather, I handed it over. The old owner and my father's accountant also submitted their reports, but here's the kicker. Only in my report and the accountant's report did the true colors of the nephew shine through. It seems he had a knack for putting on a show whenever higher management was present. Oh, how I wish I'd captured his expression when the old owner introduced him to my father and me. Long story short, my father wasted no time in demoting the bitter nephew to a mere worker, while Mark, the reliable site supervisor, rose to the position of management for the construction site. As fate would have it, the nephew barely lasted a week before submitting his resignation. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.